Our friend David Harsanyi joins now. We're going to talk about his book a little bit here, The Rise of Blue Anon. There we go. How the Democrats became a party of conspiracy theorists. David, I'm actually going to read from the inside jacket here for a second. Welcome, of course. A recent poll found nearly twice as many Democrats as Republicans believe the Holocaust is a myth. Meanwhile, 69% of Americans who believe that alien spacecraft are observing our planet right now are Democrats, a far higher number than Republicans. Historically, Democrats are more likely to be 9/11 truthers. Despite their lawn signs declaring science is real, Democrats are twice as likely as Republicans to believe in astrology. I mean, we keep going down the list. What's going on here, Mr. Harsanyi?
I think that the consensus has always been that the right is the one that is more prone to disinformation, but surely the left, and I'll tell you why it's more dangerous. They take conspiracy theories, they polish them up, they launder them through the media, they have experts tell you it's true, who are just partisans, and so they become much more plausible and much more, so it's just wider spread through the left than on the right, because on the right, usually conspiracy theorists are, on the fringes. They're not really mainstreamed in the same way. So I think that it's just more common on the left because it's just more mainstreamed through their media, through media.
Well, you mentioned in this one, I mean, you mentioned, for example, stealing elections, and Democrats always
Oh
come.
yeah.
This is something I have to remind everybody all the time. They say he didn't accept the results of the 2020 election. I'm like, Democrats didn't accept 2016, didn't accept 2000. I mean, Democrats have made an art form of denying elections.
Yeah, people forget now, or maybe they're too young, but in 2004, there was almost every major Democrat said there was something wrong with the Ohio voting. They investigated it. People tried to deny Bush the election. And remember, in the 2000s, people like Michael Moore, complete off the, crazy conspiracy theorists, made documentaries that made hundreds of millions of dollars, got standing ovations at the Oscars. That's what I mean by mainstreamed. I think that, and then when they're debunked, like let's say the Russia collusion hoax, they just move on to the next thing. No one ever pays a price. No one's called a conspiracy theorist. No one loses a job. No one loses a job.
What was the wackiest, when you're doing your research for this, what was the wackiest thing that you saw coming out as a conspiracy theory that a good number of Democrats really bought into?
Well, I mean, over in 2006, I think it was a poll that showed that over 50% of Democrats thought George Bush knew that 9/11 was going to happen and let it happen for personal benefit. But the worst one, I think, is in 2018 when, I forget the exact number, but something like 58% of Democrats believed that the Russians not had just sent some Facebook ads, but that they had messed with the vote tallies and stolen the election. And this is that's a massive number of people who believed something that there was never any evidence for, that even the conspiracy theorists weren't saying was true. They had gone, past that because they had been involved in this mass hysteria. So I think that's the craziest thing that they believed, and it just happened a few years ago.
One thing, David, and we're speaking to David Harsanyi. His book is The Rise of Blue Anon, How the Democrats Became a Party of Conspiracy Theorists. Well, one thing that to me at least sounds like it could be a part of this. I just got my copy, so I'm going to have to get in and dive into this and read it over the weekend, David. So you may deal with this in some detail in the book, but to me it seems like part of it is if a conspiracy hurts Republicans, it doesn't matter at all whether it's true or not. So even people who aren't expected to truly believe it are expected to go along with it because so many of these conspiracies just become political cudgels.
Of course. The New York Times will give a hearing to any conspiracy theorist on the left. So I write about this. Last year, the New York Times ran a huge, long story about this guy who says that Reagan had made a deal with the Iranians to not release the hostages so that he could win the election in 1980. I mean, there's zero evidence for something like that, but they'll publish it. And that's just, kind of a revisionist conspiracy theory. But obviously they'll publish anything here now as well. But I just quickly want to say that it's not just conspiracy theories. It's also paranoia. I'll give you one of the most pernicious ones. telling African American voters that they're being stripped of the right to vote, that there's voter suppression, when it is easier to vote than it's ever been in the history of mankind anywhere. But yet people believe, 60 something percent of black people believe that there's systemic, effort underway to not let them vote, or that they believe that white cops are going around hunting black people to kill young black men. I mean, that makes them feel like they're in a country that hates them, that they don't have agency. And I'm not saying they aren't racist. Of course, they're racist, but that's a paranoia that has taken hold that is simply easily debunked by factual evidence.
What do we do about this phenomenon? It does feel like at some level, David, the election results are a major pushback at a minimum to some of the craziest beliefs of the left. But is it just the loosening of their controls over the information ecosystem, as in now that X, to the degree that everyone can see, seems to be willing to at least allow people to say mean things about Democrats or things Democrats don't want said. They don't have the same stranglehold. I mean, yeah, there's talk radio, there's Fox News, there have been ways, but online, it seems to be like it seems to be loosening up a bit. Is that one way? What are the how do we deal with this? Like, how do we handle this so that people stop believing crazy stuff?
We're in a weird spot now because it's clear this election made it clear that people aren't listening to what the media is telling them. They were engaged in a paranoid style of politics, saying that Trump was Hitler, that you were semi-fascist, and all of that, and the Handmaid's Tale stuff, and all of that. So no one was really listening. Obviously, every ethnic group, all kinds of groups moved towards Trump. I think it was a very normie election. People wanted some normalcy. But now we don't really have any, we don't trust any institution. I don't think we trust any big institution. So someone has to build up places that can be trusted again. And I think, yes, it's going to be great to dunk on libs and put people in positions that dunk on libs. I'm not against that. But you also need competent people who are going to make us or allow us to trust, HHS. Who are going to allow us to trust the Justice Department. I think it's important, if you care about this stuff, that you have institutions that you can trust.
And I'm wondering also about some of these media outlets. Jeff Bezos, it was fascinating. They got so freaked out at the Washington Post because Bezos said you're not allowed to endorse in this election cycle. As if, first of all, the endorsement doesn't matter. Second of all, we all know who the Washington Post would endorse if they could endorse. But if he were to take a step back and say, I want this paper to function at least non-hysterically, maybe that's a way I could put it. It wouldn't be that hard. These papers have the ombudsman position, right? I mean, they have supposedly some kind of internal checks and balances. They haven't been functioning, but I'm saying theoretically you could create them. I mean, all you need is somebody on the Washington Post, in the newsroom whose job is to oversee the politicization of the front page from a conservative perspective. And I feel like you could start to rein some of this stuff in, or is it just impossible? Is that just there's no market for that anymore? I mean, how do you see it?
I think you need to fire most people. It's not the editorial page that's really the problem at these. Don't get me wrong; they could be better and all that. It's the reporters, it's the stray reporters that are the problem, and the culture in these places. You'd have to fix it completely, because think about the kids who are coming out of journalism school now. They're all just they're not prepared to see other opinions in the paper. When they don't endorse, the whole paper melts down. When the New York Times puts the Tom Cotton op-ed up, the editorial assistants will revolt and get the editor of the op-ed page fired. So I think there really needs to be a culture change, and that takes a long time. I'm not saying there aren't good journalists around, but the incentives are not to reward them, because who gets rewarded? If you're anti-Trump, you get 1 million followers on Twitter. If you're being an unbiased reporter and doing good work, no one pays attention to you. So until those incentives are changed, I'm not sure that it's going to get much better.
I think that's absolutely true. We've got the book here, The Rise of Blue Anon. David Harsanyi, the author. Go get your copy and look for David's columns, The Washington Examiner. David, great to talk to you as always. Thanks for making the time.
You too. Thanks for having me.
All right, my fellow gun owners, you know what I'm doing this weekend? Range Day. Tomorrow. It's coming up. Getting ready for it. And I'm going to be out there with my Bear Creek arsenal, pistol and rifle. Pistols and rifles, actually. They make a handgun that I'll have with me called the Grizzly. It's a 9mm. Now, a lot of ways this reminds me of some of the Uh, Very well known sidearms I used to train with back in the CIA days. But the Grizzly has got some great changes, some additions to it as well. And you got upgrades like an RMR optic cut, improved grip texture, and metal sights. So it feels really good in your hands. And here's the thing, the price point is less than you'd expect. A lot of premium handguns out there, 500 bucks, 600 bucks. You can get a Grizzly from Bear Creek Arsenal for $295 on bearcreekarsenal.com right now. This thing is very accurate. I'll put up a video to me of me over the weekend shooting this. I'm shooting it. I was shooting it recently with steel sights at like 20 yards. Some people are like, I could shoot the flies off a wing at that. This is everybody all of a sudden's a marksman whenever the Buckster puts up a shooting video. It's amazing. Everybody's got perfect form. Everybody can hit a bullseye at 300 yards with their weak hand and their eyes closed. Like, all right, fair enough. Whatever. Point is, Bear Creek Arsenal makes amazing rifles, pistols. Go check out what they have on the website. And I think this is really important too because it is not true about all the firearms companies out there. And I don't want to name names. Maybe one day I'll have to, but some of them, they want to sell guns, but they don't want to talk about it, right? They don't want it to be too prominent out there. Oh, because they don't want, especially under a Democrat administration, they're scared of what the Democrats may think. Bear Creek Arsenal loves what they do, want to put the best firearms in your hands at the lowest possible prices, and they stand with the Second Amendment. They believe in the gun rights community. They believe in your Second Amendment. So stand with Bear Creek Arsenal. Get yourself a great pistol or rifle from them, and you'll experience your new favorite handgun or rifle. Go to bearcreekarsenal.com. That's bearcreekarsenal.com.